The relentless patter of rain against the windows of Riley Matthews' apartment was enough to make her consider calling in sick. Seattle in November was notorious for its dreary weather, but this morning seemed particularly unwelcoming. She glanced at her phone. 7:15 a.m. If she left now, she'd have just enough time to grab coffee before her 8:30 meeting. Riley pulled her raincoat tighter and stepped out into the downpour, immediately regretting not bringing an umbrella. The familiar walk to Westlake Station took longer than usual, as she navigated puddles and hurried pedestrians, all trying to escape the weather. By the time she boarded the light rail, her shoes were soaked, and her mood had soured considerably. Emerald Street Coffee was Riley's daily ritual, a small independently owned cafe tucked between towering office buildings in downtown Seattle. The warm lighting and rich aroma of freshly ground beans provided a momentary respite from the corporate chaos that awaited her at Sullivan & Porter, the marketing firm where she'd worked for the past 3 years. The usual morning crowd, Riley thought as she pushed through the door, joining the line of office workers and commuters seeking their caffeine fix. She checked her watch anxiously. The line was moving slower than usual, and her window for making it to her meeting was closing rapidly. Come on," she muttered under her breath, scrolling through emails on her phone while inching forward. When she finally reached the counter, Emma, the barista she'd come to know through her daily visits, greeted her with a warm smile. "Rough morning?" Emma asked, already reaching for a cup. "Is it that obvious?" Riley laughed, pushing her damp hair away from her face. "Medium latte with an extra shot, please." As Emma prepared her order, Riley noticed a man in a worn jacket fumbling with his wallet at the register next to her. He appeared to be in his early 30s, with unruly dark hair, and the tired eyes of someone who hadn't slept well. He emptied his wallet, counting change, then checked his pockets, growing increasingly flustered. "I'm sorry," he said to the barista, his voice tinged with embarrassment. "I thought I had enough. I've got it," Riley heard herself say before she'd even processed the thought. "Add his order to mine." The man turned to her, surprise evident on his face. "You don't have to do that." "It's nothing," Riley shrugged, swiping her card for both drinks. "We've all been there." "Thank you," he said, the genuine gratitude in his voice catching her off guard. "I'm Daniel, by the way." "Riley," she replied with a quick smile, already glancing at her watch again. "Sorry, I'm running late for a meeting." Daniel nodded, stepping aside. "Don't let me keep you. I appreciate the coffee more than you know." Riley grabbed her latte from Emma, offered a hasty goodbye, and rushed toward the exit. As she pushed through the door, she caught a glimpse of Daniel speaking with one of the staff members, both of them laughing comfortably. Something about their familiarity struck her as odd, but she had no time to dwell on it as she hurried down the rain-slicked sidewalk toward her office building. The marketing meeting droned on longer than scheduled, as her boss, Catherine, meticulously dissected their latest campaign for a luxury watch brand. Riley's mind kept drifting back to the stranger in the coffee shop. There had been something intriguing about him, not in a romantic way, but something she couldn't quite place. He'd seemed genuine, unlike the polished professionals she was surrounded by daily. "Riley, your thoughts on this?" Catherine's voice snapped her back to attention. "I think we need something more authentic," Riley found herself saying. "The current approach feels too manufactured. Our research shows that Gen Z and younger millennials respond to genuine stories, not carefully constructed images." Catherine raised an eyebrow but nodded slowly. "Interesting perspective. Work up some examples for our follow-up on Thursday." As the meeting dispersed, Riley's colleague Mia fell into step beside her. "Where did that come from? You never challenge Catherine's concepts." Riley shrugged. "Just felt like we needed something different." She didn't mention how the brief encounter with a stranger had somehow reminded her of why she'd gone into marketing in the first place, to tell stories that resonated, not just to sell products. That evening, as Riley worked late finalizing a presentation, her phone buzzed with a text from her roommate Zoe. "Got invited to that gallery opening on Friday. You in? Could be good networking." Riley hesitated. Another event filled with the same industry people, making the same small talk. But Zoe was right. Networking was essential in their field. "Sure," she typed back. "What time?" As she packed up her things to head home, Riley found herself wondering if she'd see the coffee shop stranger again. Daniel. It was an ordinary name for what had been an ordinary interaction, yet something about it had stuck with her throughout the day. She shook her head, dismissing the thought. In a city of over 700,000 people, the chances of crossing paths again were slim to none. What Riley couldn't have known as she boarded the light rail home was that their paths were already more intertwined than she realized, and Friday's gallery opening would reveal exactly how. The gallery was housed in a renovated warehouse in the Capitol Hill neighborhood, its industrial bones softened by strategic lighting and minimalist decor. Riley arrived 20 minutes after the official start time, navigating through clusters of well-dressed attendees, their conversations creating a constant background hum punctuated by occasional laughter. "There you are," Zoe appeared at her side, looking impeccable in a black jumpsuit that contrasted with Riley's more conservative navy dress. "I was beginning to think you'd bail." "Just finished up some work," Riley explained, accepting the glass of wine Zoe offered. "Who's showing tonight?" "Local photographers, urban landscapes mostly. The owner curated pieces that capture the unseen Seattle, or something equally pretentious," Zoe said with a smirk. "But the work is actually good, and the crowd is interesting. Less marketing people, more creative types." Riley sipped her wine, feeling some of the week's tension begin to dissolve. They wandered through the gallery, pausing before photographs that caught their attention. Rain-slicked streets reflecting neon signs, forgotten alleyways transformed by street art, faces of locals caught in unguarded moments. "This one's amazing," Riley said, stopping before a large black and white photograph of Pike Place Market at dawn. The image captured vendors setting up for the day, their faces etched with determination and quiet dignity. "The photographer has a great eye for authentic moments," a voice beside her commented. Riley turned, the wine glass nearly slipping from her fingers when she recognized Daniel from the coffee shop. He looked markedly different. Gone was the worn jacket, replaced by a well-fitted dark gray button-down and black jeans. His hair was still slightly unruly, but intentionally so. "You," she said, surprise evident in her voice. "From Emerald Street Coffee." Recognition dawned in his eyes, followed by a warm smile. "The coffee savior. Riley, right? You remember? Hard to forget someone who rescues you from caffeine deprivation," he replied with a slight laugh. "I didn't expect to see you here." Zoe glanced between them with undisguised curiosity. "You two know each other?" "Not exactly," Riley explained. "We met briefly at a coffee shop earlier this week." "Very briefly," Daniel agreed. "I didn't get to properly thank you." "It was just coffee," Riley shrugged, though she was secretly pleased he remembered. "Do you come to these openings often?" Something flickered across Daniel's expression. Amusement, perhaps. "When I can. I have a connection to this gallery." Before Riley could ask what he meant, they were interrupted by a woman in stylish glasses who placed a hand on Daniel's arm. "There you are. Jennings is looking for you. He wants to discuss featuring your work in the Seattle Arts Quarterly." Daniel nodded. "I'll be right there." Turning back to Riley and Zoe, he added, "Duty calls. It was nice seeing you again, Riley. Enjoy the exhibition." As he walked away, Zoe raised an eyebrow. "Okay, spill. What's the story with you and the hot photographer?" "There's no story," Riley insisted, though her eyes followed Daniel as he moved through the crowd. "I paid for his coffee when his card didn't work. That's it." Well, it just happens to be Daniel Chen, the photographer behind half the images here, including the one you were just admiring. And based on the prices I saw, his card should definitely be working." Riley blinked, processing this information. "Wait, he's the artist? But at the coffee shop he seemed less successful?" Zoe suggested with a knowing smile. "Maybe there's more to your coffee shop, stranger, than you thought." Throughout the evening, Riley found herself repeatedly glancing in Daniel's direction as he moved through the gallery, engaging with attendees, and occasionally gesturing toward his photographs while explaining something about his process. There was an ease to his interactions that suggested he was in his element, a stark contrast to the flustered man she'd encountered at Emerald Street Coffee. Near the end of the evening, as the crowd had thinned considerably, Riley found herself alone before a striking photograph of a weathered man playing chess in Occidental Square. The image conveyed such intimacy that she felt almost intrusive looking at it. "That's Maurice," Daniel's voice came from behind her. "He's been playing chess in that park for 20 years. Taught me a few moves, though I never had the patience for it." Riley turned to face him. "Your work is incredible. I had no idea." "That the guy who couldn't pay for his coffee was the featured artist?" he finished with a self-deprecating smile. "Yeah, about that. I should explain." "You don't owe me an explanation," Riley said quickly. "Maybe not, but I'd like to give you one. Over coffee, perhaps? Though this time I'm buying." Riley hesitated, then nodded. "I'd like that." As they exchanged numbers and arranged to meet the following morning, Riley couldn't help but wonder about the series of coincidences that had brought them together again. In a city of hundreds of thousands, what were the odds? What she didn't yet understand was that their connection to Emerald Street Coffee ran much deeper than a chance encounter in a morning line, and that revelation would come with its own complications. The weekend brought unexpectedly clear skies to Seattle, a welcome respite from the persistent November rain. Riley arrived at Emerald Street Coffee 15 minutes early, choosing a table by the window where sunlight streamed in, warming the space. Saturday mornings transformed the cafe's atmosphere. Gone was the hurried energy of weekday commuters, replaced by the leisurely pace of weekend patrons lingering over their drinks. She spotted Daniel as he approached from down the block, camera bag slung over his shoulder. There was something different about him in the daylight, a confidence in his stride that she hadn't noticed during their brief encounters. When he entered, several staff members greeted him with familiar nods, reinforcing Riley's suspicion that there was more to his connection with this place than he'd revealed. "Morning," he said as he slid into the seat across from her. "Thanks for meeting me. Have you ordered yet?" "I was waiting for you," Riley replied. "Since you insisted on buying." Daniel smiled, a dimple appearing in his left cheek. "What's your poison?" "Latte with an extra shot." "Coming right up." He stood and walked directly behind the counter, where he began preparing the drinks himself with practiced ease. Riley watched, confusion giving way to understanding. When he returned with 2 expertly crafted drinks, she couldn't help but laugh. "You work here?" "Oofy, not exactly," Daniel said, setting her latte before her. The foam was decorated with an intricate leaf pattern. "I own the place." Riley's eyebrows shot up. "You own Emerald Street Coffee? But then why did I let you pay for my coffee?" He took a sip from his own cup. "An Americano," she noted. "It wasn't planned. I was testing a new point-of-sale system, and my dummy card didn't work. I was about to explain when you jumped in. Then I was curious." "Curious about what?" "About why a complete stranger would do that. Most people in a rush wouldn't have noticed, much less offered to help." Riley felt her cheeks warm slightly. "It wasn't a big deal. Anyone would have done the same." "That's where you're wrong," Daniel said, his expression turning more serious. "I've owned this place for 4 years. I've seen how people treat each other, especially during the morning rush. That kind of spontaneous generosity is rarer than you might think." Riley traced the rim of her cup with her finger, oddly flattered yet slightly uncomfortable with his assessment. "So you own a coffee shop, and you're a successful photographer. Interesting combination." "The photography came first," he explained, relaxing into the conversation. "I was freelancing, mostly editorial work, when this place came up for sale. The previous owners were retiring, and I'd been coming here for years. It was impulsive, probably foolish, but I couldn't bear to see it change hands to some chain." "It doesn't seem foolish. This place is always busy." "Now it is. The first 2 years were touch and go. I nearly lost it all." His eyes scanned the cafe with unmistakable pride. "But it's become something special. A community more than a business." As they talked, Riley learned that Daniel had grown up in Seattle, the son of Chinese immigrants who had run a restaurant in the International District for decades. Photography had been his escape, a way to document his city and its changing landscape. The coffee shop had become an extension of that passion, a place to showcase local artists and create connections. "What about you?" he asked. "Emma mentioned you're in marketing?" "You asked about me?" Riley couldn't help but smile at the thought. Daniel shrugged, looking slightly embarrassed. Just curious about the mysterious coffee benefactor. Riley told him about her work at Sullivan and Porter, her ambitions to create campaigns that meant something, and her growing frustration with the disconnect between marketing narratives and authentic experience. That's what I love about photography, Daniel said. It cuts through the artifice. A good photograph tells the truth, even when that truth is complicated. Their conversation flowed easily, moving from work to favorite Seattle hideaways, books they'd recently read, and the changes they'd witnessed in the city. Before Riley realized it, nearly 2 hours had passed. I should probably let you get back to your Saturday, she said reluctantly, gathering her things. Actually, Daniel hesitated. I was heading to the farmer's market to pick up some things. The cafe features a local roaster each month, and I like to pair their coffee with seasonal foods. Would you want to come along? No pressure. Riley considered her empty Saturday stretched before her. Laundry, emails, maybe a workout. I'd like that. They walked the few blocks to Pike Place Market, navigating through tourists and locals alike. Daniel moved with the confidence of someone intimately familiar with the space, greeting vendors by name and occasionally stopping to take photos of particularly vibrant displays. At one point, he purchased a bag of apples, handing one to Riley. Best honey crisps in the state, he promised. The apple was perfect, crisp and sweet, with just the right amount of tartness. As juice dripped down her fingers, Riley realized she was enjoying herself more than she had in months. There was something refreshingly uncomplicated about Daniel's company, a genuineness that contrasted sharply with the calculated interactions of her professional life. As they wandered through the market, Riley noticed Daniel occasionally stopping to photograph seemingly ordinary moments, an elderly couple selecting flowers, children pressing their faces against a bakery window, a fishmonger's weathered hands wrapping a purchase. What made you want to capture that? She asked after he'd photographed a woman laughing as she sampled honey. Joy, he said simply. Authentic joy is worth documenting. It reminds us why we're here. The statement struck Riley deeply, echoing questions she'd been asking herself about her own work. What was the point of selling products if the narratives around them were hollow? What if marketing could capture authentic moments instead of manufacturing aspirational ones? As the afternoon progressed, Riley found herself increasingly drawn to Daniel's perspective, not just his artistic eye, but his approach to business and community. By the time they parted ways, exchanging a slightly awkward but warm goodbye, she felt a connection that went beyond their chance encounter. What she didn't anticipate was how quickly that connection would be tested when their professional worlds collided in an unexpected way. Monday morning arrived with a familiar drizzle, but Riley's mood remained buoyant as she made her way to Emerald Street Coffee. The weekend spent with Daniel had shifted something in her perspective, though she wasn't quite ready to define what that might mean. Emma greeted her with knowing eyes as she approached the counter. Good morning, Riley. The usual? Please. Riley nodded, glancing around the cafe. Is Daniel around? Not yet. He usually comes in around 10 on Mondays. Want me to tell him you stopped by? No, that's okay. I'll catch him another time. Riley paid for her latte, leaving a generous tip as always. As she waited for her drink, her phone buzzed with an email from Catherine. Team meeting, 9:30. New client pitch. Your presence required. Riley stifled a groan. Unexpected client meetings usually meant rushed work and long nights. She grabbed her coffee and hurried toward the office, mentally preparing for whatever emergency awaited. The conference room was already filled when she arrived. Catherine at the head of the table, surrounded by the creative team and account managers, all wearing expressions that ranged from excitement to apprehension. Perfect timing, Riley, Catherine said. We've been approached for a rebranding project that I think will interest you particularly, given your recent comments about authenticity. Riley took the last available seat, curiosity piqued. Emerald Street Coffee is looking to expand, Catherine continued, pulling up a presentation on the screen. They're opening 3 new locations across the city and want a cohesive brand identity that maintains their independent spirit while allowing for growth. Riley nearly choked on her coffee, the very coffee from the business they were discussing. Their owner has been resistant to marketing in the past, Catherine added, but he's recognized the need for professional guidance with this expansion. We're pitching next week and I want fresh ideas. Riley, given your interest in authentic narratives, I'd like you to lead the creative direction. Me? Riley managed, her mind racing. I mean, yes, of course. As the meeting progressed, details emerged about the pitch requirements. Emerald Street Coffee wanted marketing that reflected their community focus and artistic roots. They were adamant about maintaining their identity while reaching new neighborhoods. Riley remained silent about her connection to Daniel, unsure of how to navigate this unexpected collision of her personal and professional lives. Was it a conflict of interest? Would knowing the owner give her team an unfair advantage? Or would Daniel feel betrayed if he discovered she was working on the pitch without disclosing their acquaintance? Throughout the day, these questions circled in her mind as she researched coffee shop branding and began drafting concepts. By evening, she knew she needed to be transparent, with both Daniel and Catherine. She texted Daniel, "Need to talk to you about something important. Are you at the cafe tomorrow morning?" His reply came quickly. "I'll be there at 7. Everything okay?" "All good. Just need to discuss something." The next morning, Riley arrived at Emerald Street Coffee earlier than usual. Daniel was behind the counter, sleeves rolled up as he adjusted the espresso machine. When he spotted her, his face lit up with a smile that made her stomach flip uncomfortably given what she needed to discuss. "Morning," he said, coming around to meet her. "You're here early. Coffee?" "Please, but that's not why I'm here." Riley took a deep breath. "My firm, Sullivan & Porter, has been invited to pitch for your rebranding." Daniel's expression shifted, surprise replacing warmth. "Sullivan & Porter? The luxury brand specialists?" "Yes. Catherine, my boss, told us about it yesterday. I've been assigned to lead the creative direction." "I see." His tone was careful, measured. "And you're telling me this because it felt wrong not to. We've spent time together, and I didn't want you to think I was using that connection or hiding something from you." Daniel was quiet for a moment, wiping his hands on a towel. "I appreciate your honesty. The truth is, your firm wasn't my first choice." "Oh?" Riley tried to mask her disappointment. "My business partner, Aisha, pushed for Sullivan & Porter. She admires your campaigns for that watch brand, thinks we need that level of polish as we expand." He sighed. "I was resistant. Your firm's work is beautiful, but it often feels manufactured," Riley supplied, remembering their conversation about authentic moments. "Exactly. But Aisha made valid points about needing professional guidance for this growth phase." He studied her face. "And now you're leading the creative. Interesting coincidence. Is it a problem? I can recuse myself if you think there's a conflict." Daniel considered this, then slowly shook his head. "Actually, it might be perfect. You understand what this place means, not just as a business but as a community space. You've seen how we operate." A smile tugged at his lips. "And you have first-hand experience with our customer service philosophy." Relief washed over Riley. "So we're okay?" "We're okay. But I should warn you, I'm still a tough client. I won't approve anything that doesn't feel true to Emerald Street's spirit, regardless of our—" He paused, searching for the right word. "Connection." I wouldn't expect anything less," Riley assured him. "And I need to tell Catherine about us knowing each other." "Of course," Daniel nodded. "Professional transparency all around." As predicted, Catherine was initially concerned about the potential conflict, but ultimately saw the advantage of having someone with insider knowledge of the client's values. The condition was clear. The relationship had to remain professional until after the pitch was decided. The following week was a whirlwind of preparation. Riley immersed herself in the project, drawing inspiration from her conversations with Daniel and her observations of the cafe's operation. Rather than focusing on sleek aesthetics or trendy minimalism, she built a campaign around the authentic moments that defined Emerald Street Coffee: the community connections, the artistic collaborations, the small acts of kindness she'd witnessed and experienced firsthand. The pitch day arrived, and Riley entered the conference room with both nervousness and conviction. Daniel sat across the table, flanked by his business partner Aisha and their financial advisor. His expression revealed nothing as Catherine made introductions. As Riley presented the concept, community brewed, she spoke directly to the values Daniel had shared with her. The campaign featured real customers and staff, highlighted local artists whose work adorned the cafe walls, and emphasized the ripple effects of small connections made over coffee. One mock-up showed a photo of hands exchanging a coffee cup, with the tagline, "Every cup tells a story." When she finished, the room was quiet for a moment. Aisha looked impressed. The financial advisor was nodding, but it was Daniel's reaction Riley was waiting for. "You captured it," he said finally, a genuine smile breaking through his professional demeanor. "This doesn't feel like marketing. It feels like us." 2 weeks later, Sullivan and Porter officially won the Emerald Street Coffee account. Catherine was thrilled, crediting Riley's authentic approach for securing the partnership. What she didn't know was that after the contracts were signed, Daniel had texted Riley, "Coffee tomorrow?" "My treat, of course." Their professional relationship established, they were free to explore the personal connection that had been building since that rainy morning when Riley had impulsively paid for a stranger's coffee. 6 months later, as Riley sat in the newest Emerald Street coffee location, a sunlit space in Fremont adorned with local artwork and photos taken by Daniel, she marveled at how a small act of kindness had altered the course of her career and her life. The expansion had been successful, maintaining the soul of the original cafe while welcoming new communities. Daniel joined her, sliding a latte across the table, the foam decorated with an intricate heart. "For the woman who taught me the value of spontaneous generosity," he said with a warmth that had become familiar. "I still can't believe you let me pay that day," Riley laughed, shaking her head. Owner of the cafe, pretending to be broke. "Yo, best mistake I ever made," Daniel replied, reaching for her hand across the table. "Though technically, you still owe me $4.75. "I think I've paid that back with interest," Riley smiled, thinking of the successful campaign that had helped bring his vision to life. "With interest," Daniel agreed, his eyes reflecting something much more valuable than the price of a cup of coffee. A connection that had begun with a simple act of kindness and grown into something neither of them could have anticipated. As the afternoon sun filtered through the windows, casting golden light across their table, Riley reflected on how the most meaningful stories often began with the smallest moments, a lesson she now applied to both her professional work and her personal life, creating narratives that were as authentic as they were powerful. Sometimes the best stories were the ones you couldn't make up, like paying for a stranger's coffee, only to discover he owned the cafe.